Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Calgary Party 11 public hearing. For the record, my name is Enrique M. Rodriguez, Associate Construction Analyst with the California Building Standards Commission. This morning, we will hear verbal comments from the public regarding HCDs and BSC's proposals for both residential and non-residential occupancies as part of the 2024 triennial code adoption cycle. Before we get started, I would like to go through housekeeping items and a high-level overview of today's agenda. For those present at the meeting, there are restrooms right outside next to the hallway. The codes for each restroom are written on the whiteboard. Regarding the breaks, we will take 10-minute breaks as needed. For the record, this meeting is scheduled from 10 a.m. and will adjourn once all public comments are heard and recorded for the record. I would like to call this meeting to order and introduce participants, starting with BSC staff and then proceed on to HCD staff. At this time, let's do some introductions, starting with BSC staff. Anybody?
Good morning, Enrique. This is Kevin Day, Deputy Executive Director for the California Building Standards Commission. Thanks for joining, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin.
Good morning. This is Stoyan Bumbalov, the Executive Director of the California Building Standards Commission.
Thank you, Stoyan. Let's go with folks virtually on BSC side. If anybody wants to introduce themselves. Okay, hearing none, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Timothy O'Malley. I'm with the California Building Standards Commission.
Okay, thank you, Timothy. And then we have
Laura Mills here. I'll be facilitating the meeting and calling on you as you raise your hands to give your comments. I will also be timekeeping.
Awesome. And in the room, we have our newest employee. His name is Wu Chiong, our newest associate architect. And lastly, my name, as I said before, Enrique Rodriguez, associate construction analyst. Now I'd like to proceed on with HCD staff that's joining us virtually today.
Good morning, Enrique. Emily Hill, Branch Chief, representing HCD's Division of Codes and Standards, and I am joined by Assistant Deputy Director Mitchell Baker.
Welcome both. Appreciate you attending today's public hearing. I would like to now have Ms. Laura Mills read into the record the Zoom and telephone instructions.
Today's hearing is available via Zoom's online platform and teleconference, as noted in the public hearing notice. This hearing will also be live streamed on the CBSC YouTube channel. Please be aware the YouTube live stream has an approximate 45-second delay, and there is no method for offering verbal or written public comment. Closed captioning is available via Zoom's automated live transcriptions. To view closed captions in Zoom, click on the CC Live Transcriptions button, and closed captioning will automatically appear if you are watching via YouTube. The hearing materials may be viewed on CBSC's website as listed in the hearing notice. Participants on Zoom should avoid feedback or other technical issues by joining the hearing through one device only. After any in-person comments are complete, comments will be taken from the public in Zoom with their hands raised, then from the public on the Zoom phone line. If you wish to make a comment on a specific agenda item, please listen for CBSC staff to ask for any comments from the public. At this time, please virtually raise your hand using the raise hand icon in Zoom. You will be recognized by me in the order your hand was raised. At this time, please unmute yourself. When you are done speaking, please both lower your hand and mute yourself. Please ensure that you have a working microphone on or attached to your device prior to raising your hand to make a comment. I will continue through the queue until there are no raised hands remaining. Then we'll take comments from the public on the Zoom phone line. When we go to the phone lines, please unmute yourself. When you are done speaking, please remute yourself. When phone comments are complete, Enrique will then proceed to the next agenda item. Please speak slowly and clearly so your comments can be transcribed correctly. If you are experiencing technical difficulties with the Zoom platform and your ability to comment, please call CBSC at 916-263-0916. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Laura. Does anybody have any questions regarding the Zoom and telephone instructions?
There are hands raised. Are those hands raised regarding the instructions? If they are not, please lower your hand and hold off raising your hand until we are asking for comments. Thank you. There are no hands raised.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Before we hear public comments, I would like to provide some context. Today's hearing will be in compliance with Government Code sections 11346.4 A and 11346.8 little a. During the hearing, we will hear comments from the public attending in person first, then those attending virtually via Zoom. BSC and HCD staff are interested in your testimony on the proposed regulations before us. Note that public comments should be limited to regulations that are currently proposed for amendment or adoption. Any regulations that are not currently in effect and are not proposed for amendment or adoption as part of the 2024 triennial code adoption cycle are not open for comments. Recommendations are appreciated and will be considered as a public comment similar to written 45-day public comments received on or by midnight July 1 of 2024. All comments received, written or verbal today will be processed and responded to in the final statement of reasons pursuant to Government Code section 11346.9. Additionally, California Administrative Code section 1-413 states that public comments shall clearly indicate the action desired and include a substantial reason for the desired action based on the 9-point criteria. If you have a written comment, you may summarize them for the record, and BSC staff will ensure that they are included in the rulemaking record. Please include your first and last name and any written materials you submit at the physical hearing. I would also like to remind the audience attending physically or via Zoom that this public hearing is a forum for the agencies to receive comments on proposed regulations, and we are not here to deliberate or answer questions about the regulations. While staff are on hand to answer any questions that may arise about the code adoption process, it's not appropriate to engage in a back and forth dialogue with state agency representatives. All oral and written comments received at today's hearing will be recorded and responded in each agency's respective final statement of reasons. If you are present at the meeting and would like to comment orally today, please line up at the desk and provide them when I ask for public testimony. Please state your name and affiliation, if any, and identify what portion of the regulation you intend to address each time you speak. We ask all commenters to speak slowly and clearly, and if you are commenting via Zoom, raise your hand and remember to mute your phone or computer after commenting. Ms. Laura will cue cue you in based on the order of raised hands. Today's public comments will be limited to 4 minutes per speaker so that BSC and HCD staff may hear from all members of the public wishing to provide a comment. For commenters attending via Zoom, please listen for your name and an invitation to speak. When it's your turn to address the BSC HCD staff, unmute yourself, speak slowly and clearly, and then mute yourself when you are done. After the testimony has been received and the record has closed, BSC and HCD staff will review the comments and respond in the final statement of reasons. We will now proceed with public testimony, starting with HCD's proposal to adopt and amend the 2025 edition of the California Green Building Standards Code, Cal Green, Part 11 of Title 24. For those present, please line up at the commenter's desk. Since we don't have any public commenters here, we're going to proceed to hearing from the public attending virtually. And so, Ms. Laura, let's start with first comment from the public.
Okay, just waiting for hands there are a lot of hands are going up.
Okay, we'll take them one by one.
Yep. First hand raised is Dennis Corellis. Good morning, Dennis.
Good morning. This is Dennis Corellis. I'm a former deputy state architect and a member of the Electric Vehicle Charging for All Coalition's leadership team. And I want to thank you for the opportunity this morning to make additional comments on the proposals. I have comments on HCD's items 4, 2, 3, and 7. How would you like to proceed with that, Enrique?
Welcome, Dennis. Yeah, let's start for all public commenters. Let's go in chronological order as they appear in the 45-day express terms. So just start with the first item, and then we'll just take one item at a time.
Okay, I'm going to do item 4 first, and then because items 2, 3, and 7 refer to the same exception that's being proposed, if that would work. Thank you very much.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's go to the actual code language. Yeah.
Okay. Again, I'm Dennis Corellis with the EVCAC. We are requesting that HCD clarify the proposed exception in additions and alterations, section 4106.4.3. The proposed wording states, and I'm going to read what the code is proposed now. When existing parking facilities are altered or new parking spaces are added to existing parking facilities and the work requires a building permit, each parking space added or altered shall have access to either a low power level 2 EV charging receptacle or level 2 EV charger, unless determined as infeasible by the project builder or designer and subject to concurrence of the local enforcing agency. We believe that the proposed level 1 exception should be kept, but should be revised to the following language. Exception where A, work requiring a permit is being performed for the installation of level 1 EV charging receptacles or level 1 EVSE, or B, the altered parking spaces shall have access to EV charging. Let me go into the rationale for that request. This clarification, we believe, is needed to meet the requirements of Health and Safety Code Section 18930 Criterion 5, which requires the cost to the public is reasonable based on the overall benefit to be derived from the building standard. Since the inclusion of level 1 charging will avoid unnecessary additional costs, especially in facilities where the existing electrical system may be challenged by the addition of EV charging. EVCAC and other entities, including Cal ETC, are requesting this clarification to address both level 1 EVSE and level 1 receptacles and to ensure that existing EV-ready charging infrastructure can remain and not be required to be unnecessarily upgraded. And with that, that's my comments on item number 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Point of order, Enrique, do we want to restart the clock when he goes to another item?
No, I mean, Dennis, you have three more comments?
Well, the comments on items on the exception in item 2, 3, and 7 are the same. So there are 3 items on their
Okay,
express terms, but it's just one discussion. I'm not going to go over it, say the same thing
Okay.
3 times.
all right. No, I see, yeah, no need.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis, appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. I will mute myself.
Thank you,
Thank
and lower your hand.
you.
All right, next is Jordan Moldow.
Hi, Jordan Moldow from the city of San Jose. I wanted to comment on the long-term bicycle parking for multifamily buildings. So I'm really strongly in favor of the change to add the long-term bicycle parking into the mandatory measures for residential facilities. Above all else, I think that's a very important change. Unfortunately, we've had decades of poor land use decisions and car parking minimums throughout the state, and code changes like this will begin to help to reverse the trend on the poor land use and make it so that more renters have the ability to own and ride a bicycle if they so choose. So above all else, I'm strongly in favor of adding the bicycle parking mandates into the mandatory code. I do think that it could be improved. Broadly speaking, I am strongly in favor of all of the recommendations that were emailed to you by the California Bicycle Coalition in their letter dated June 11th, 2024. They were suggesting some additional features that should be either required or allowed to be included in long-term bicycle parking facilities. Some of their suggestions included making sure that there's some room for larger bikes, such as e-bikes, cargo bikes, and other adaptive bikes for people with disabilities. They also talked a bit about electric vehicle charging for bicycles, which I think is important. I think in any facility where there's going to be required electrical vehicle charging for cars, I think it would also make sense for the long-term bicycle parking to also at least have some capabilities for charging for e-bikes as well. So I think that would be an important thing to figure out how to include in the right way. And then my main comment is on the minimum bike space requirements. The current draft code suggests that there should be 1 required bike parking space for every 2 dwelling units, which I believe is very far from sufficient. If we want to be able to mitigate climate change and reduce emissions, our building standards need to, encourage people to own bicycles if they so choose, and only having one bike parking space for every other unit is not going to be sufficient. It might be sufficient today, but in a decade or two, hopefully more and more people will be owning bicycles, and these codes need to be considering the longer term future of how many people might be owning bicycles. For the purpose of the code cycle that you're considering today, I know that CalBike was proposing that you change it to 1 bicycle parking space for every 1 dwelling unit. I think that would be a good compromise, and I think you should definitely consider that. I would still suggest, from my own personal opinion, just representing myself, that even that is not quite sufficient. My proposal for today was going to be that you have to satisfy both of these minimums. So a minimum of at least one bicycle parking space for every one dwelling unit, or a minimum ratio of at least one bicycle parking space for every one car parking space. And then the requirement would just be whichever of those two is greater would be the requirement. Again, I think it's important that we allow people to.
Please wrap it up. You're over your 4 minutes, so I'm gonna give you 15 seconds to wrap it up.
Thank you. Yeah, so please increase to one bicycle parking space per dwelling unit, or go, even further beyond that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Okay, moving on.
Holly Arnold.
Hi there, my name's Holly Arnold. I'm an architect with Gensler. My comment is about required EV charging spaces for multifamily residential. I think my ask is that there be an exception for supportive housing and potentially affordable housing where providing EV chargers and the EV infrastructure for very limited parking spaces really puts an undue burden financially on the project that really is trying to find an affordable means to provide as much housing for people as possible. And sometimes this the EV chargers and the infrastructure pushes things just a little bit too far. Our suggestion would be to deliver the project with an EV-ready infrastructure in the event that funding comes through, but our ask would be that you all consider an exception for supportive housing where residents may or may not have access to cars in the first place. So thank you so much for your consideration. We look forward to hearing more.
Thank you, Holly. Appreciate it.
Tobin Simek.
Yes, thank you. This is Tobin Simek with AO Architects in Orange County. I have two comments, one regarding EV parking, the second regarding bicycle parking. If I can make both of those within this time frame, I would. So the first one regarding section 4.106.4.2.2, it does state that the multifamily EV-ready parking spaces with receptacles, which is kind of the new term, low power level 2, assigned or unassigned stalls, one per dwelling unit. I understand that. However, the second part of that, the next section, 4.106.4.2.2, number 2, multifamily EV-ready parking spaces with EV chargers. So in addition to the receptacles, level 2 chargers to be provided for 25% of common use and unassigned spaces, my suggestion would be to relabel to common use unassigned to distinguish from the quote unquote unassigned of prior section number 1. Otherwise, a wrongful interpretation could be made that unassigned spaces need to have both receptacles per sub 1 and charger per sub 2. So that's the suggestion. Moving on to the bicycle parking, 1 space per 1,000 square feet. The requirement for multifamily residential is typically based on dwelling unit count, not square footage. And so it would be consistent to change that to a square footage, to a per unit instead of square footage. For instance, on long term, it does state, as the previous gentleman said, it refers to a per unit base, not square footage. So my suggestion, make it on a per unit, not a square footage base. It makes more sense for residential. That's all I have.
Thank you, Tobin. I appreciate
Thank you.
Your comments.
Sven Tess.
Morning, Sven Tess with the Electric Vehicle Charging for All Coalition. My history with EVs goes back close to 20 years now, having run PG&E, Peninsula Clean Energy's electric vehicle group, spearheading Palo Alto's groundbreaking EV Charging for All REACH code of 2013, and most recently giving away 50,000 miles of free charging at my curbside charger in front of my house, wherein I talk to EV drivers every day about the difficulty in finding inexpensive, safe, convenient residential home charging. What I'd like to talk about is what Dennis Corrales just spoke of, and I'd like to reiterate his support for those clarifications, and that also it is my understanding that Peninsula Clean Energy, Sacramento Municipal District, and Cal ETC are likewise in alignment in making those changes. It's not just us, Electric Vehicle Charging for All, requesting those changes. Also, I'm hoping my colleague Linda Hutchins-Knowles will talk about a clarification regarding multifamily dwelling and assigned and unassigned parking. It's something that I would like to talk about or request, and I'm a little bit saddened that it was not addressed anywhere that I could see except in HCD's comments back or response, and that is changing the requirement for single-family dwelling from EV capable to EV ready. And the delta here is simply the EV capable requirements mean panel space, panel capacity. That means when you do the capacity requirement calculations for the house, the electrical capacity, you include the need for a 40 amp EV, 240 volt EV charger, and you have a slot for that breaker. You just don't install the breaker, and you have either conduit or slotting to make the wiring easy, and you're just missing a receptacle. So it's a breaker, wiring, and receptacle. Those costs and the installation are less than $200. You compare that to a new homeowner having to retrofit that EV capable later at roughly $1,500. And it will depend whether they do it legally and get a permit and pay for that permit. In Palo Alto land, that permit, just the base cost, never mind getting an electrician, is $250. The cost that the initial construction could have been covered in initial construction. Why is this important? Because it adds up to about $75 million a year that the homeowner over 50,000 units per year, that's what HCD estimated, is going to have to pay. That's $75 million that could have stayed in our economy, that could be used for other things. Instead, it just make ready work. And our electricians are already burdened with having to electrify so many other things that this is in this day and age, is sort of, I don't understand as an engineer. Let's fix the bridge. In closing, I want to say thank you. We started this coalition in 2019 trying to get equity for such that every multifamily housing resident that had access to a parking space had access to charging. And now we have that. And I just want to say thank you to everybody. And I also feel like thank you to everybody at HCD and BSC that over these past 4 years has adopted an EV and is now enjoying that same inexpensive, clean, exciting charging and driving of an EV. Thank you.
Thank you, Sven. Appreciate your timing.
Michelle Pierce.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
you
ma'am.
can.
Hi, I'm Michelle Pierce. I'm with the Electric Vehicle Charging for All Coalition. And we all appreciate that the changes that were proposed in the 2025 code that ensures that every newly built multifamily unit with assigned parking will get an EV-ready receptacle. Everyone deserves the benefits of using clean, electrified transportation, which reduces air pollution. Sorry, I forgot to, TV didn't mute. Okay, sorry. Let me start over. Everyone deserves the benefits of using clean electrified transportation, which reduces air pollution. This increased access will allow California to be better positioned to meet its climate goals and address structural inequities, big word, inequities in our built environment. Charging at home is the most convenient and affordable method. Residents in both single-family homes and multifamily housing all deserve access to EV charging where they live. This progress for new construction will enable more people to adopt clean EVs and help to continue California's leadership in transportation electrification. And I really object to the previous speakers who want to pull back on what was already agreed to. The EVCAC has been fighting for a long, long time to get to where we are. And these people that have not been involved from the beginning have all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden because I've been fighting all along, but what they're suggesting is inequitable. Just because somebody lives in low income housing does not mean they won't be driving an electric vehicle. Okay, changing topics, the exception for parking lifts. I'm not sure if this is out of place, but the exception for parking lifts was created during a time when technology was less advanced. The exception should be removed because it doesn't take into account how modern parking lifts are now capable of providing EV charging. It is unfair to deprive residents to access EV charging because they live in buildings served by parking lifts. When those lifts are capable of providing this essential service, it is time for rulemakers to remove this outdated loophole from the building code. Again, it's all about equity. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Before we proceed on to the next commenter, please give specifics as to the code section that you want have comments on. So BSC and HCD staff can write down the specific code sections, and then we'll know what the proposed change is. So please state the specific code section and your proposal. Thank you.
Okay, next is Beverly Deschaux. I hope I didn't butcher that name,
No.
sorry.
Close. Hi, this is Beverly Deschaux. I'm with the Electric Vehicle Association of California Central Coast. We are one of 100 chapters across the United States. And we talk with people regularly about what would cause them to not buy an electric vehicle. And often it is not being able to charge at home because they live in a multifamily housing situation. So I'm sorry that I don't have the exact code number, but I want to support the proposed 2025 code change that gives each multifamily unit that has assigned parking with an EV-ready receptacle. This has been a great improvement as we've watched HCD go through the process of increasing the amount of availability of EV charging capability, EV charging in general. Now that the state, the federal government, and local governments, local entities such as our CCA have offered generous rebates, people are now not having the obstacle so much of that they can't afford it. What we hear most now, people can't charge. So please support that. We support that change, and thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. Appreciate your comments.
Josh Cohen.
Thank you. I'm Josh Cohen with Switch, SWTCH. Switch is an electric vehicle charging solutions provider. And yesterday, my colleague Ben Brint submitted written comments along with Mal Scoron from ChargePoint. So I'm not going to repeat all of those comments, but I do want to emphasize just 3 key points. And I'm going to ask your understanding. I don't have the actual the proposed code sections in front of me, but they are referenced in the written comments. So the first is a call out to really support the proposal for EV chargers at multifamily buildings. I'm aware of the concerns around affordability, but I would frame it in this way, which is that if California wants all of its households to be able to drive electric, the fact is, even though it does add some additional cost at the time of construction, it is far less expensive to include EV infrastructure at the time of construction. So I understand the sensitivities, but by avoiding installing at the time of new construction, even for affordable housing, the effect is to put the benefits of EV adoption further out of reach for those households, households who arguably, in a lot of cases, have a higher transportation energy burden to begin with. Second point is around the benefits of load management and appreciation for acknowledging the benefits and cost savings that load management affords. And I really want to just step back and put it into this broader context of California's climate and electrification goals, where California has very aggressive transportation electrification commitments. As you know, it has building electrification and decarbonization goals, and it has power sector goals to decarbonize the power sector. So in this age of increasing load growth, it's also trying to decarbonize the electrons flowing on the system. In my view, the only way California will have a fighting chance of being able to meet all of these goals is if it has the ability to manage load at scale, both the building electrification load as well as the transportation electrification load. And so really appreciate the acknowledgement of load management in these standards and the ability to do circuit sharing. And related to that is my third point, which is to encourage support for normal power level 2 charging as opposed to the low power. And it may seem counterintuitive, but the higher power the circuits can handle, the higher power capacity, the greater ability there is.
1 minute.
Thank you, to manage the load. By contrast, if vehicles are plugged in at low power receptacles, they have to be plugged in for a longer duration of time, and that load is more fixed. There's less ability to manage that load. And so when we're really looking beyond a couple vehicles or a couple buildings to the grid, the ability to manage that load at scale is critical. And the more power capacity those circuits have, the more flexibility there is to do that load management. I appreciate your consideration and all the time and attention all of you have put into this. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate your comments.
James Fry.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, James.
Excellent. Hi, it's James Fry. I am 2050 Partners supporting the California IOU Codes and Standards group, and we're, as always, thrilled to be a part of this workflow that you've set up. We've submitted our written comments, and hopefully you'll see that in your inbox from yesterday. And we'll have a few highlights here today for HCD. Specifically on HCD item 2 and item 3, we recommend that HCD make the 40 amp raceway capacity requirements mandatory instead of voluntary. Having this raceway capable will support future upgrades and will minimize the cost when we need to go to bidirectional power transfer, which will be critical for managing our grid moving forward. We also recommend that HCD narrow the new exception for level 1 projects. In this case, your section 4.106.4.3, we recommend that you constrain that exception to be for multifamily buildings. In this case, please consider hotel and motel projects with customers that have traveling customers with, they arrive late at night with lower battery levels. They may leave early in the next day and have a long journey ahead. So please consider constraining your exception to multifamily buildings. And then in this case, BSC and HCD could work together on an infeasibility exception study In this case, we all want exceptions to be used less often to increase access to charging. And one way to do that is to learn from the use of the exceptions to understand, are they being used as we expect? Are there ways that we could improve the code language? So we have an open offer to help organize data collection in that area, to convene meetings or whatever. Also, we'd like to have the technology be ready for the future. In this case, these wider raceways for potentially EV power export, as well as something new called the J3400 Universal AC Socket Outlet. This is a new type of EVSE with a connector that is a socket instead of a cord. And this is promising to be the right thing for site hosts that are nervous about cord management and such. So please take a look at our comments in that area. And then in general, we have this continuous request to be very, very thoughtful about receptacle use in EV spaces. Receptacles really will struggle with V2G capable behaviors in the future. They'll struggle with customer satisfied load management. And in general, because of that, we recommend that you avoid using receptacles to start with, at least in non-residential applications. This is because session control, yep, thank you. Session control and energy metering are a big part of commercial settings, and that will raise the price of a charging location to almost near the same as an EVSE. Thank you very much, and I look forward to helping in the future.
Thank you, James. Appreciate your comments.
Bryce?
Okay, hello, this is Bryce Nesbitt, and I have my own timer, so I won't need that reminder. I'm going to start very specific, veer off topic for a moment, and then get back to very specific. So starting with section 106.4.3, which is the level 1 EV charging exception. The problem here is that I may come along voluntarily and want to do better than level 1. The cost of installing a level 2 20 amp level 2 circuit is essentially identical to the level 1. So I think you need to broaden that exception to allow me to install level 2 charging when I'm not messing with anything else in the parking lot. Now I'm going to go a little bit higher level. Been involved with this process for a while, and it is difficult because it's not being based on goals. The Building Standards Commission and HCD have not said what they're trying to achieve. We're talking about individual wording in individual sections, a very small picture view. The big picture view, which we could work on and a statement could be made, would be something like everyone who has an e-bike can charge it. Everyone who wishes to drive an EV can charge it. Then the regulators could sit there and take a look at what parts of the code aren't meeting that standard. EV charging for everyone or EV charging for someone, work it out and say what the goals are high level so that the little bits of the regulation can then automatically kind of line up with your, what you guys do best, which is to actually write regulations once you have a goal. Going back to smaller picture, section 4.106.4.1 is an example of an exception to EV charging for all. It specifies rules for new 1 and 2 family dwellings with attached private parking garages. Great. It's not in scope for your regulations, but it should be. Because if I have a detached garage, all of a sudden I'm not covered by it. So it's a loophole to that EV charging for everyone. And I encourage you to start in the next code cycle for the interim cycle by creating a mission statement and then combing through the code to see where the exceptions are. Another exception is 106.4.2.2, which says that if your building happens to have a mechanical device for storing cars, different EV charging rules apply. That's crazy. That's an exception. And I encourage you to look through, start with a statement of goals, whatever it is, work it out, go through the public comment on it, get an agreed statement of public goals, and then look through the code and see where you're missing it. And 106.4.2.2 is clearly missing it. It takes a class of parking and says for some reason that's not even stated or justified, that will not involve the right to park your EV. Next section is unbundled parking. You've got a lot that's going about assigned parking. In my area, there's no such thing. Nobody sells parking that way. An apartment building, the parking is separate. So is all unbundled parking in our area. And I think that in the next section, you should look at how to regulate unbundled EV charging. So thank you for taking my comments. And again, what are the big picture goals? Can you state those? And if you have an exception to those goals, can you articulate why that exception is there? And please do that for the parking lifts if you would. Thanks so much. Good day.
Thank you, Bryce, for keeping it to 4 minutes. Appreciate that. Appreciate your comments.
Moren Boyer.
Hi, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
My name is Moren Boyer. I am an architect and vice president of design innovation with Dignity Moves. I'd like to support the comment made by Holly Arnold of Gendler with regards to interim or temporary housing projects only. We are faced in each and every instance with extreme pressure to deliver these projects to house our most vulnerable members of our community. And anything we can do to reduce costs, such as providing only EV ready, would be important to us. It is really, really difficult to deliver these projects, and it's really important that we look to reduce costs in every instance. With regards to the comment made, the individual who stressed the inequality, we are absolutely supportive and in no way wish to make it more difficult for the members of our communities to operate electric vehicles. In this case, the perfect can't be the enemy of the good. And we are so pressured to bring these projects in under budget that in this case, we have to advocate for the good and let the larger goal, which we absolutely support, of electrification, be something that we could hopefully defer or receive an exemption. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maureen, for your comments. Appreciate them.
Guy Hall.
Yes, this is Guy Hall with the Electric Vehicle Association, a member of the policy team. Just a second here, I apologize. We had some technical issues. Okay, right. Back, I have a comment basically on item 4, 104.106.4.3, the electrical vehicle charging for additions and alterations of parking facilities. So to start with, HCD is really to be commended for their actions supporting building owners who voluntarily add EV charging. However, this exception provided in 4.106.4.3 could be interpreted in a very restrictive way with that limitation of $1,000, which I think Sven mentioned earlier, which eliminates adding charging for multiple residents and very different types of charging. Given the intent of the exception, which is really to support building owners to voluntarily add EV charging for residents, the exception really should be simplified and generalized for any EV charging, such as an exception could read as exception where work is permitted, where work requiring a permit is being performed for the installation of EV charging, level 2 EV charging is not required to be installed. So I think this is something that makes the code a bit simpler and more clear, and provides the goals that I think this this item is really intending to achieve. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Guy, for your comment.
Vanessa Warhite.
There, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Sorry. Thank you. First of all, my name is Vanessa Warhite. I'm the national lead for the EV Charging for All Coalition, and I want to echo the thanks of my colleagues to your staff for making these changes. And I want to just in brief support the comments from EVCAC, what Dennis and Linda and Sven have all said. I also want to encourage you to consider CalBike's recommendations for e-bike parking in particular. And I would like to speak briefly to two issues. One is the unbundled parking issue, and one is the architects who are requesting an exception due to what they're referring to as an undue burden on affordable housing and temporary housing. In terms of the unbundled, I just would like to point out in section 4.106.4.2.21C, the language describing charging receptacle requirements for mixed, assigned, and unassigned parking in multifamily housing needs to be clarified. That's to prevent misinterpretation of the code. And I believe these comments were submitted in our written letter, but I just want to emphasize that in the sentence, at either the assigned or unassigned parking space, the word the should be replaced with the word an. So at either an assigned or unassigned parking space. And in addition, we need to clarify either the assigned or unassigned parking space, but not both, should actually say, but not necessarily at both, so that we are not proscribing both, but just saying it's not required at both. So that's a clarification of language we are encouraging you to adopt. And then to the point about an undue burden, and also the architects are referencing EV ready. I think they are using that term incorrectly, because we all agree they need to be EV ready. I think they are confusing EV ready with make ready, which is EV capable in the code. But I just want to make sure, thank you for not making those exemptions, and point out that hot water also used to be considered an undue burden on builders. As late as the 1960s, housing for poor people didn't even have hot water. And at some point, we all realized that, in fact, it's a public health crisis, and everybody needs hot water. And we are now at that point with transportation. People at the bottom of the economic ladder bear an unduly heavy energy burden, and their gas bills are outrageous, and their pollution levels are outrageous. And we need to be doing everything to get charging to those folks first. I understand that housing is expensive. I also understand that California no longer has parking minimums. So the world doesn't need more parking. If you've got a problem with the charging, put in less parking if you have to. But if you are going to put that parking in for the folks who do drive, and there are, I would argue, most lower income folks do need to drive. They're often in places where they don't have reliable access to transit. They need to have charging. And for those same reasons, we need to have bike parking and e-bike parking that is the most affordable way for people to get around efficiently and quickly and safely and cleanly. So thank you, thank you, thank you for all of the changes that you've made, and deeply support everyone's help here. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa, for your comment.
Jonathan Hart.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. First, want to thank the agencies for all of your work during these code cycle. Appreciate the thought and attention you've put into the code changes. There are a couple of items I wanted to comment on. I even have the code sections of where they would go in. I think very quickly before talking about those, just a high level comment is I have made these same comments in every workshop and every set of comments that we filed on workshops and on proposals. And up until now, there really just hasn't been any discussion on these from the agencies. If the agencies don't implement any of these right now in this code cycle, then I would ask that all of these be included on the items to discuss in the next code cycle. I've been making these comments for several years now, and would just ask that these be included on the items that we discuss. With that, one is I would ask that level 2 chargers, that it be explicit in the code that level 2 chargers, full power level 2 chargers, can be used in place of low power level 2 receptacles. It's been said in workshops that that's obvious. Everyone should know that, but I would contend that it's not obvious, that we have ALJs, HJs that do not think that that's obvious, and ask that that be explicit in the code. An example in HCD's code would be section 4.106.4.2.2, where there's discussion of using receptacles and having an exception within there, or a clarification that level 2 EV chargers may be installed in place of low power level 2 chargers. In that same section, ask that there be an exception for the receptacle power source, that the dedicated circuit can be wired to the house meter rather than every individual unit's electrical panel. And in this way, you still allow for load management, and each person can be separately metered and therefore pay their residential rate for the electricity that they use. This item was supported by the advisory committee, but because it wasn't on the agenda, was not voted on. Then lastly, with BSC section 5.106.5.3.1, ask that EV capable spaces have the same exception as EV make ready and full EV charge supply spaces, that they can be sized down to 3.3 kW when using ALMS. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm going to ask that when it's time for comments on BSC's proposed code changes, that you reiterate your comments for BSC when the time comes and when we're done with HCD's comments. Thank you.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Thank
you. Christian Corby.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Christian Corby, and I'm the Deputy Executive Director at the California Electric Transportation Coalition, or CALITC. And mainly I wanted to just say that we really support the changes that have been made to the code, especially around the multifamily housing charging requirements for existing for new construction. This is a major improvement, and we really appreciate BSC's and HCD's work on this code. So great job, and thank you. I'd also like to support the comments made by 2050 partners. All those comments really resonate as well with CALITC, with the exception of one of the recommendations around the exception in section 4.106.4.3. With respect to that exception, we recommend a different change, which I put in our written comments. Mainly, one, we don't want to rule out the use of level 1 EVSE and receptacles. Both of them we think should be allowable within the exception. And then also we want to make sure that we take into account any altered spaces that already have existing charging installed. So We included some specific language there and hope if it isn't adopted in this code cycle, will be considered for the next one. So yeah, thank you all very much, and really appreciate your work on these important codes. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen, for your comments.
Sean Armstrong.
Hello, thanks very much. I'm Sean Armstrong, the managing principal of Redwood Energy. We have won the grand prize from the California Building Industry Association and the grand prize from the United Nations World Habitat Award. We've worked on 400 all-electric affordable housing apartment complexes, including some of the first ones that were net positive in our country. First apartments, first houses. So I want to speak to the topic of what affordable housing tenants need. As an EV driver myself, I've been delighted to see that my driving costs have dropped by 3/4. When we first installed the first EV chargers in affordable housing, it was in 2014. We got a prize from PG&E, that was the most efficient building built that year. And the tenant that immediately started using it was an old man, he's a low-income senior citizen, and he was trying to travel to his friend's house, a half-an-hour drive away. And because we were providing free EV charging, he changed out his car, got an EV, and lowered his driving costs. And he was in a little article that we wrote up on it. It was back 10 years ago. And it was obvious that his goal was to lower his driving costs. And I can see that that is the case for anyone who's driving an EV in California, except in the situations in apartment complexes where owners, particularly market rate owners, have the ability to upcharge the cost of the electricity sold through common chargers. That's not done in affordable housing. They get the same pass-through costs. But I have to say that the policy of wiring directly to tenants' apartments is a brilliant solution that should be embraced as the way that construction is done for all housing in our state. Low-income households frequently live in market rate housing. There's maybe one apartment built for every 4 people who need affordable housing in California. So they go into the market rate housing that gets built. So really, there shouldn't be any exception. It should be something that all drivers have access to. In all the housing that is built for them with a dedicated parking space, they should get access to the lowest cost electricity, which is residential electricity. And it should not be subjected to the exploitation that is only available in affordable housing or market rate housing that's multifamily, because the CPUC has not yet decided to regulate that resale of electricity to tenants. And it's an economically exploitive relationship that is regulatorily allowed. Everyone knows it's happening. And it's really a terrible thing. It is simply what lower income households are subjected to for lack of people caring enough to adopt sensible policy changes. And this is that sensible policy change. I want to note that if you are trying to get an EV right now as a low income household, it's $240 a month to get a brand new Hyundai 9, right? This is a vehicle that is available right now doing vehicle to grid back charging over in the Netherlands. It is already being used for the kind of advanced grid work that we're hoping to do in California, but in other countries. So least cost driving, a low cost leased car is the way of the future. It allows us to do, as one of the previous speakers talking about, the kind of grid management that we're hoping to do. So with that, I just want to say thank you for the policies that are trying to be codified today. Please do not provide any exceptions for any multifamily housing of any type if it has a permanent parking space for a tenant. Under those circumstances, everyone should have access to low-cost charging. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean, for your comments.
There are no other hands raised at this time, and there are no telephone callers.
Okay, great. Let's take well, before we go on break, I'd like to ask Mitchell or Emily if they want to say something in closing out the public comments for HCD's proposal.
Yes, thank you, Enrique. I appreciate everyone's time and thoughtful comments. HCD will do our best to capture those comments and connect them to the proper section with coordination with the Building Standards Commission. Again, just thank everyone for their time today to provide these verbal comments and previous written comments.
Thank you, Mitchell and Emily, for attending. This closes the public comments for HCD's proposals for the 2025 edition of Cal Green Code Cycle. We're going to go to a quick 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll entertain the comments for BSC's non-residential Cal Green proposals. Thank you. Okay, folks, welcome back. Those 10 minutes went by seemed like it was 5 minutes. But so now that we're done hearing comments on HCD's proposed code changes, we will entertain comments for BSC's proposal to adopt and amend the 2025 edition of the California Green Building Standards Code, CalGreen Part 11 of Title 24. At this time, I'd entertain any comments from the public attending virtually via Zoom.
All right. Josh Cohen.
Hi, good morning again. This is Josh Cohen with Switch SWTCH. If it is permissible, just out of respect for everyone's time, I'm happy to just reference my earlier oral comments from the prior public hearing for this one.
Absolutely. Yeah, just restate what you were saying before, and you do have written public comments, right? I'm remembering your
Correct. We
Yes.
submitted, Switch and ChargePoint submitted joint written comments yesterday, and the 3 points I wanted to just reemphasize were around the value of including EV ready and EV chargers in even for multifamily and even for affordable housing. Second point was around the importance of load management for California to achieve its overall grid goals. And the third is the value of normal power or full power level 2 charging to support that load management.
And anything specific to BSC's proposal?
No, nothing further. The more specific comments are in the written comments we submitted.
Okay, great. Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Josh. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Bryce.
Hello, this is Bryce Nesbitt, and I know that we're here on to the non-residential measures. In terms of what's specific to the non-residential measures, I think there's work to be done in 2 sections, particularly with regard to the capacity requirements around load management and their relationship to dwell time. So the longer a vehicle is parked, the less power that it needs in peak. And you should be looking at the dwell time specific to your occupancies in order to determine what the load management system has to be able to produce. In general, as an electrical engineer, when I read those load management sections, I get a little bit confused and worried that they're going to constrain what would otherwise be a reasonable design. And I encourage you to reach out to electricians and designers who are working in load management in order to make sure that those sections are correct. Second, I'll absolutely support the Bike Coalition's comments regarding charging for electric bikes and e-bikes. I think that should be included in the bike parking requirements, particularly for workplace charging. Third and last, just return your attention to section 106.4.2.2, which are the mechanical parking lifts, and really ask the department, so you have chosen to adopt HCD's language with regards to the exemption for parking lifts. I encourage you to, in your response, say why you are adopting those. What California benefit or benefit to commercial occupancies you are getting from accepting those restrictions. As you know, many of us don't feel that those restrictions are correct, but we want to understand why they're being there in the first place so that we can address that issue. You should also have a letter from a number of the parking lift manufacturers on the technical aspects of that. This isn't a good forum to go over those. So I'll leave you with that, but strongly encourage you to reach out to experts on load management with regards to those sections. I am such an expert. Happy to talk to you.
Thank you, Bryce, for your comments.
Christian Corby.
Hi, again, Christian Corby at Cali TC. I wanted to say that we support the changes in the code and again applaud BSC and HCD for expanding the EV charging requirements. I know that commercial properties they have different demands, and I think I really appreciate the earlier comment to focus on dwell time. That is a major driver for charging needs. So definitely support that comment. I also wanted to throw out a quick plug for an event that we're hosting next week with 2050 partners on the challenges to EV charging. I believe we've invited all of HCD and BSC staff, and I'd like to extend that invitation to everyone on the call. Feel free to reach out to me through our website at calitc.com. I'm happy to give you more information. We'll be talking about a lot of the challenges around multifamily housing charging and ways that we can solve that. So thank you all very much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Christian, for your comments.
Matt Zippy. Hopefully I didn't say that terribly wrong.
Hey, that's all right. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
This is Matt Zibiak with 2050 Partners supporting the IOU Codes and Standards Group. Once again, we'd like to reiterate our support for all of BSC and HCD's code changes. We'd like to call out in particular the 40 ampere raceway capacity requirements. We really appreciate that effort towards future proofing. And we also support the mixture for J3400 connectors, allowing the use of both 208 240 volt and 480 277 volt, because we recognize many commercial buildings are fed by 480 volt three-phase power. And by allowing them to use 277 volt, these buildings can avoid installing costly step-down transformers, and they can reduce the energy losses in their conductors by more than 50% when they use that 277 volt that connector can accommodate. So we really appreciate that. And as part of that effort, we recommend BSC begin work to develop a signage standard to alert charging customers of the higher voltage when that 277 volt is used with a J3400. In this way, customers that might have legacy vehicles and use a J1772 to J3400 adapter can understand that port may be using higher voltage, and this can prevent damage to adapters and damage to their vehicle. So as needed, we would like to offer our resources from 2050 Partners during the research phase so we can figure out a reasonable signage standard. I'd also like to reiterate my colleague Jim Fry's comments about discouraging the use of receptacles in the future, particularly in non-residential applications. In many cases, some of these higher current receptacles were not designed to accommodate the number of cycles that might be experienced in a non-residential setting. So we have some safety concerns around accelerated wear and tear. And as was mentioned before, you miss out on potential V2G and demand response capability. And as an alternative, we would recommend that BSC explore the J3400 EV socket adapter, right, which has a lot of the benefits of receptacles, like not having to deal with cord management and maintenance cost, but has a lot of the capabilities of a full EVSE, including bidirectionality and demand response. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt, for your comments.
Sven?
Good afternoon, Sven Tess, Electric Vehicle Charging for All Coalition. I'd like to push back on the comments by Switch and ChargePoint as the EVSPs for both multifamily housing and non-residential. And I apologize, my internet died and I'm struggling to do this off my phone. If you go to both ChargePoint sites and Switch's site, you can't tell the cost of their actual chargers, but they talk a lot about extracting money from charging. And when you have direct wiring from the units meter or
sorry,
meter.
Point of order, Sven. This is not a dialogue. and there is no back and forth communication between commenters. This is just to receive
No,
comment.
I understand that, Enrique. I'm trying to ensure that you have a different opinion / understanding in that Switch and ChargePoint have a vested interest that is not in alignment with that of the residents or the users. It is a money generating system. And it's important for HCD as one of your, and BSC as one of your objectives, to keep charging as low cost as possible, such that adoption is greater. If adoption, the cost of electricity is similar to that of gasoline, we will not have adoption. And we are seeing pricing level 2 and level DCFC that is in excess of the cost of gasoline, because the EVSPs take their pound of flesh. So this is actually important for you, for HCD BSC, to understand that. And that's why so many people charge at home. So again, we're in full support of having receptacles, and we very much like the idea of the 3400 SAE 3400 socket, which is essentially a receptacle, which is just essentially wiring, such that you can install an EVSC on top of that. You can buy on the web right now an EVSC for $100 that is UL listed, whereas a ChargePoint Switch EVSC is on the order of thousands. So we're trying, and that cost has to be borne by somebody, and that is by the hotel resident. It is by the multifamily housing resident. Second of all, they talked about not being able to do load management. The utilities provide a very simple way of load management. It's called time of use rates. And as every EV driver knows, it is simple to set the time of use when I charge my car from my phone on my car via telematics. So the need for an EVSE versus a receptacle, it's a false paradigm. Finally, just want to again reiterate how far we've come in these past 4 years. And that dwell time is so critical when you look at, say, a shopping complex where you need the employees have long dwell time. They can use level 1 or low power level 2 to fully charge their vehicles over an 8-hour shift, versus somebody coming in just for half an hour that needs a DCFC fast charger. And again, the cost for that service should be appropriate for that use and cost of installation. The DC fast charger costs a lot more to install versus a simple level 1 receptacle or low power level 2 receptacle. And again, question, ask, where's the interest in making these comments coming from? Thank you.
Thanks, Sven. Folks, let's keep the comments to comments specific to the regulations and comments specific to BSC's proposal. So comments to BSC is what we're entertaining today. Thank you.
Dennis?
Hello, this is Dennis Corellis, architect again with EVCAC. I'm going to make a comment on BSC express terms item number 3. It's table 5, 106.5.3.1, EV capable spaces and EVCS. We believe that the number of charging spaces shown in this table, even though it's been upgraded in your proposal, is insufficient to meet the needs of a large number of residents and employees who live in existing multifamily homes and don't have a place to charge at home. These should be increased in accordance with health and safety section 18930 criterion 3, which basically states that the public interest requires the adoption of the standard, and the public interest includes, among other items, seismic safety building and building system performance, consistency with environmental, public health, and access statutes and regulation. This is an equity issue, so I think the table needs to be looked at. My second item on this item, your item 3, is that in your table, the first row range says 0 to 9. I don't think you're going to have a parking facility with 0 spaces, so I recommend that you just change that from 1 to 9. And that's a change without regulatory effect, basically. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis, for your comments.
Jonathan Hart.
Yes, thank you. I had mentioned this earlier, but was asked to state it again during the BSC section. And again, high level comment is any of these proposals, if they can't be taken up now, ask that they be on the list of items to be discussed during next code cycle change. Specifically for BSC, section 5.106.5.3.1 for EV capable spaces, asking that EV capable spaces be able to use the same ALMS sizing as EVSE ready and EV charging spaces, where they can be sized, the panel space and electrical equipment that is sized down to 3.3 kW if those chargers to be installed in the future are going to be using ALMS. I'm sure there's a lot of questions that come up from this. I would love to have a dialogue on this again. If this is something that can't be adopted now, could be discussed in the next code cycle. That was the only specific BSC item, and would just want to make one comment that there's been some negative comments towards EV charging providers. I would just want to say, as a EV charging provider, we aspire to provide low cost charging, want to be able to provide what customers need. Also want to make the point that no industry exists without being able to make a profit. Not that we want to have price gouging, but I think the fact that any company is trying to make money at what they're doing is to be expected and shouldn't be something seen as negative. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
There are no other hands raised at this time.
Okay, seeing that there's no more raised hands, and no comments, I think we can adjourn this meeting. I do want to thank everybody that participated. I think this is great. This is showing due process of how the APA and rulemaking is supposed to work. So I thank everybody that participated virtually and all the HCD and BSC staff that helped put this together. I just want to thank you all. And with this, we adjourn this public hearing. Thank you so much for your participation. Have a great day.